Years ago, after getting a taste for gardening, I wanted to build my own planter. Something portable since I was renting. I also needed to keep my plants watered. So I designed my very first sub-irrigated planter. I filled it with retail potting mix and it was up and running. Fast forward 11 years. The planter's still functional. I still get awesome crops. I'll top off the mix as needed, but it still has the original potting mix. It's turned into this deep, rich humus. A crucial key to success is fertilization. Large, vigorous plants are going to draw up lots of nutrients. So, each season, the soil needs replenished. For years, I've tested vegetables in these three SIPs. I kept track of my inputs. I even began recording my harvests. From this wicking bed, last year, I harvested over 44 pounds of sweet peppers and 110 pounds of watermelon, all pulled from 30 by 70 inches of soil. Whether it's corn, tomatoes, zucchini, lettuce, or cucumbers, these systems have performed well. I'll share what I learned so you can maximize your yields. To start, I want to discuss fertilization in general. Some gardeners want to be as sustainable as possible. Perhaps they won't use synthetic fertilizers, only organic. Some don't even want to buy any products. The idea is to take free organic products, compost them down, and cycle them into the garden. It's almost like a badge of honor to be completely self reliant. Homemade composting and vermicomposting with worms are like the gold standard for nutrient replenishment. I couldn't agree more. In concept, I've harvested countless gallons of worm castings. My compost tumbler still churns out lots of compost, but I apply it in other areas of my garden, my conventional raised beds, my seed starting mixes. So I agree with these approaches. I just don't use those inputs in my SIPs, wicking or self watering beds. Years ago, I cautioned against bagged composts or manures, like you find at big box stores. Why? These agricultural industry byproducts can vary in quality and texture. In the ground or raised beds, they work fine, but many won't wick well in SIPs. This applies to topsoil as well. The ultra-fine, silty particles get mucky when wet. Pore spaces plug up, causing an anaerobic environment. We don't want root rot to set in. Homemade composts might work if you can make a woody compost with a loose texture. I did a small test using peat moss, vermiculite, and homemade compost. The plant grew well, so this might be an option. But compost can vary from batch to batch. And what about first time gardeners who don't have any quality compost? I want everyone to enjoy success, even if they're just starting out. That's why I focus on testing organic fertilizers and even some time release stuff. These nutrients are readily available to most gardeners from day one. They're more concentrated than bag manures or compost, making them easy to work with. Quite importantly, with a guaranteed analysis, you can consistently determine how much to use in the bed. All-purpose fertilizers can keep your SIPs running at peak performance without negatively impacting aeration or wicking properties of the substrate. I've seen consistent results even after a decade of use. So, what have I been using? How can you apply nutrients in SIPs? On my site, albopepper.com, you can read pages all about fertilizing SIPs, so be sure to check that resource as well. But let me share what I've been testing and how I typically apply my nutrients. Some people mistakenly think synthetic time release fertilizers won't work in SIPs. Things like Osmocote seem to be off limits in wicking beds. Well, I've tested these fertilizers and they work just fine. That being said, I really do prefer organic products. Jobe's and Espoma are two brands worth mentioning. For years now, I mostly buy bulk bags of garden tone and plant tone. These include macro and micronutrients. That includes calcium and magnesium. I like plant tone because I can get a larger size. It's a super great value. As a general, all around solution for your vegetables, Espoma Garden Tone works nicely. Jobe's also has an all-purpose, which would work great. Some plants will use extra nitrogen, like corn or kale. For these, the plant tone is a great option. On the other hand, if you give tomatoes too much nitrogen, you'll get lots of stems and leaves with very little fruit. Job's and Espoma both have tweaked formulations intended to optimize yield. Once you select a fertilizer, how much should you use? It's easiest to say, follow the instructions on the label, but that's where things get confusing. Look at these instructions for Job's all-purpose. For a 2-inch plant, use 1 1/2 tablespoons. Okay, but plants grow. What happens when it's 12 inches? Scratch that. Let's look at the linear feet. For a 10-foot row, use 1 1/2 cups. All right, but what's this down here? It appears you could also look at the pot size. So for a 4-inch pot, use 1 1/2 tablespoons. Easy enough. What if we increase the pot to 16 inches? The volume increases 64-fold. Do we use 64 times the fertilizer? Nope. The jump from tablespoons to cups is only a 16-fold increase. So in the 4-inch pot, the nutrients would be 4 times as concentrated versus the 16-inch pot. But wait, that 16-inch pot gets the same amount of nutrients as an entire 10-foot row of vegetables. What? Forget this. Is Espoma any better? Here are the instructions from Garden Tone's PDF label. Here's a printed label from 2017. Same NPK. Let's use this sample bed and follow the PDF. First, we soil prep with 6.7 cups of fertilizer. A week later, we side dress the plant rows with 16.6 cups. And again throughout the growing season. Let's say 3 more times. In the end, we've used 73 cups of fertilizer. That's a lot. Is that overkill? And do you really need to follow a monthly schedule? Why not just do it all at once and be done? Fortunately, my 2017 bag gave instructions based on container volume, 2 cups per cubic foot. This bed has 32 cubic feet, so I would need 64 cups. That's a little less than the other method. Is it still too much though? Why not just try to match a retail potting mix? Lots of people use Miracle-Gro. Sure, some gardeners raise their nose at the brand and parent company Scott's, but you can't deny the results. In my very first year trying to garden, I saw the difference. Throw a pepper in the ground, and you get this. Put it in a pot of Miracle-Gro, and voila! This explosion of growth made me so excited, I never wanted to stop gardening ever since. So, what's in that stuff? Just look on the bag. I can take the total weight of the mix and look at the percentage of NPK. This lets me determine the weight of macros in a single cubic foot. So, how does that application rate for Espoma Garden or Plant Tone stack up? On a cubic foot basis, it's somewhat comparable. Depending on the macros, some values might be slightly lower or up to twice as much compared to a stock bag of potting mix. Distilling this all down leads to this general guideline for blended organic granular fertilizers. 1 to 2 cups per cubic foot of potting mix. That assumes the NPK values are around 3 to 5. This also assumes the soil has been depleted from the previous season. Certainly, this applies to building an unfertilized mix from scratch. To see what would happen on the high end of this scale, I've been testing my SIPs year after year, recording my data and monitoring plant health. After 5 years of testing, here are some sample rates from this past growing season. As you see, I've mixed and matched, no issues. Even mixing time release with organics has worked great. Quickly, I'll just hone in on last year's pepper crop. I blended 3 fertilizer types. Altogether, it was about $6 in fertilizer, but my yield was 44 pounds of peppers. That could easily amount to $160 worth of yield. So, what are my tips for mixing this into the soil? In my SIPs, I use a 2-prong approach. For short-term crops like lettuce, I use a lower fertilization rate. and I just blend it all into the top 3 to 4 inches of soil. But for larger and longer lived crops like corn, cucumbers, zucchini, peppers, watermelon, or tomatoes, I mix in between 1/3 to 1/2 of the fertilizer into the surface. Afterwards, I bury bands or strips of the remaining fertilizer around and in between the plants. To do this, carve a trench 4 inches deep with a hand trowel. Evenly pour in the fertilizer. Then press the fertilizer into the soil so it's 2 inches below the surface. Cover it over with some of the surrounding mix. Then I plant my crops. Be sure the nutrient bands are at least 3 inches from the plant's roots. What if you're sowing seeds? Large seeds, like squash, melon, or corn, have germinated fine as long as they weren't too close to the fertilizer strips. But those nutrients will suck up water and could dry out sensitive seeds. So either wait to apply the bands after the seedling has gotten established, or just grow the seedlings ahead of time. What happens though is the blended fertilizer acts quickly, becoming available to plants early on. As nutrients get depleted and plants get larger, their roots reach those nutrient bands. Even if you use purely organic, uncoated fertilizer, the nutrients last much longer, steadily feeding your crop throughout the season. Are there any finer points to be aware of? I don't use impermeable mulch like plastic over the surface of the soil. I've even stopped covering my SIP boxes during the winter. Here in the Northeast, we get regular precipitation. This helps to flush excess salts out of the soil at the end of the season. Likely, this has helped to avoid toxic buildups. If you're in an arid climate, keep this in mind. You might manually flush the soil surface each season. You could also get a soil analysis every couple of years to check nutrient levels and salinity. You might opt for the lower, more conservative fertilization rates and see how the plants respond. Rotating crops could be a way to balance out nutrient levels. I generally don't do it, but it's a good option. You could also consider secondary scavenging crops. Heavy feeders, like brassicas, could be grown after the main crop as a way to suck up unused nutrients. This would help to further reset your bed before the next growing season. Conversely, what if you underestimate the plant's nutrient requirements? Later in the season, leaves might be yellowing due to nitrogen depletion. A side dressing of fertilizer would help, but liquid plant feeds can give the quickest results. These work as both root drenches and even foliar applications. I don't advise adding them to the water reservoir though. You can use various organic solutions, but honestly, Miracle-Gro plant food works just fine. Whatever you decide, pay attention to the NPK values so plants can actually get what they need. I hope this info helped with your container and SIP gardening. Wicking beds supply lots of water as needed. In a good location, your plants can get sufficient light. That just leaves nutrients. And by supplying what plants need, you can get high density, high yield crops. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. I hope these tips bring you great success so you can have a year of happy gardening.
Hi.
Hi.
Your yard always looks like
I try to stay on top of it.
I'm amazed at the size and what you produce.
In a small space, right?
Really.
Thank you.